September 8th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Before we do roll call, Rachel, I just want to let the public know that we have one new board member since our last appointment and meeting, and Matt Geezy. Raise your hand, Matt Wade, thank you. Would you like to say anything, Matt, about yourself, or you just want to smile and...
Smiling and nodding.
Okay, good. So this is Matt's first meeting, and then former President Don Houston is going to be up for appointment tonight to fill the remaining seat on this committee. So he's going to sit up here tonight. He will not have a vote in anything that we do here in committee tonight, but he will, I assume, unanimously be appointed and confirmed tonight at the village board meeting. So just wanted to get that out of the way so we know where the new faces are up here. Okay, roll call, Rachel.
Noted.
Thank you. Any comments or correspondence?
I just have one comment.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to hear Don's advice tonight, though, even though he can't vote.
Absolutely. I planned on, if Don would like to
Cool.
speak on anything he can, he just will not have a vote this evening. Any public appearances that I'm missing? Okay. Then moving on to reading and approval of our minutes from July 14th of 2025.
I'll make the motion.
All right, motion on the table. Do I have a second? Second, any more questions, comments, concerns about the meeting minutes? All right, hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Meeting minutes are approved. All right, moving on to new business. Item number 1, presentation and discussion of the 2026 budget section for EMS operations, interfacility rescue, 102 grant, fire operations, fire stipend sheet, fire 2% dues, fire donations, fire and EMS impact fees, and we will consider an appropriate motion for action. Zeke, would you like to start this off, please?
Sure. So I will begin by introducing Dalton Brandt, which I think most of you know, some of you may not. Dalton is one of our shift leads in EMS, also is an officer in the fire department, and I think all of you know Chief Eric Rosina. So we're all here tonight to talk about what's going to go on. This has been a perennial conversation for us with challenges in fire and EMS for a number of years. What I will say is that we've got some what I'll describe as good news and some intermediate news and some not so good news all the way around. First up is Chief Rosina, I think, has done a really fantastic job in pulling in volunteers from a time when volunteers are being turned away from the departments. That's real positive. On the other side of that, fire calls in our community are rather infrequent for just fire-only incidents, and so we don't have a lot for people that do volunteer to get into. And if you know anything about the fire service, it's a career field where folks want to be where the action is. So we typically will get younger employees or volunteers out here in Waterford, and then rather quickly after they've done some basic training, move on to bigger communities where they can encounter those things they actually want to deal with in their career. It would be like, training to be a brain surgeon and saying, okay, we'll let you operate 3 times a year. Right? There's just not a lot of activity out here. So we understood, if you look in our minutes from years past, that we were setting up a situation that created a deficit at the finance committee and board level. Michelle and I have to go annually through a Standard & Poor's bond rating question each year, and now that this is on their radar, they will continue to ask questions about it, and eventually we will run into a bond rating downgrade. The only thing that is your saving grace right now, 2 real components of it. Number one, you have a fund balance that is substantially over what is best practice in the industry, which is a 25% fund balance for working capital. And number two, you've had interest income that has been pretty healthy and substantial the last several years. For those of you following developments with the Federal Reserve and the White House, President Trump has made no bones about the fact that he's displeased with Jerome Powell's performance as Fed chairman due to Mr. Powell's policies on interest rates, not quite mirroring that of Mr. Paul Volcker of the 1970s and 80s, but certainly holding the line in order to try to stem the tide of inflation. It's a pretty dynamic global trade environment as well. So compared to a year ago, we are down almost 100 basis points on interest yield for our investments, and I anticipate that by the time we get to May of next year, given the duration that we have on our investments, that we're going to see, again, declining investment income. And that'll place some significant pressure on our general fund. You have limited resources with which to adjust that. And so the single biggest component of your budget are the fire and EMS departments, if you look at it on an operating, from an operating standpoint. So I'm gonna go over to the board over here and talk about challenges in staffing.
You can talk.
I'll just be loud.
That's fine.
So that deficit was supposed to be made up by going out and doing inter-facilities transfers. This is when one hospital or care facility needs to move a patient from one facility to the next. In the past, Chief Mueller was his first year out able to achieve approximately $260,000 in revenue. Second year of doing it was able to achieve $344,000 a year in revenue. Different leadership had different perspectives about what roles and responsibilities were, and I'll leave it at that due to obligations between the village and past employees. At any rate, our income is now $0 a year in interfacilities, and that is where your budget deficit has come from. That was not an action of the village board nor this committee that decided to take our income to zero and place public services in jeopardy. So, in order to field one ambulance in Wisconsin, DHS 110 is the regulatory, statute that we look to, and it says that to crew an ambulance in a community with a population of less than 25,000, you have to have 2 licensed providers, one of which is a EMT paramedic. So you can have a paramedic and a EMT basic in order to crew that ambulance. That's just dead minimum of what you have to have. And what you have finances for to support with tax revenue and income from actually doing the runs, as our collection rate has been, which is, by the way, 46% of revenues billed. You've got enough income to staff 2 people 24/7, 365 in both a paramedic and an EMT level. So you've met the basic requirement on a full-time basis of being able to get an ambulance out the door. What this doesn't do is to effectively allow you to field a fire response based on NFPA standards for a minimum crew complement of 3. And so we have what might be best thought of as a hybrid system, where we have employees that are cross-trained in different departments. Right now, you've got 3 people on day shift, so if we just look at days, nights, and weekends. On day shift, you have today 3 that are in the station for A shift and C shift, 2 in the station for B shift. We've frozen a position because of deficit. As we have attrition, unless we make different decisions, staff will continue to freeze those positions to get us back in alignment and not in deficit. So on day shift, in your DPW department and your admin combined, you have 4 that are credentialed as firefighters who can field a fire response. And then EMS, you have 2 that are credentialed, 1 at the paramedic level, 1 at the EMT level, outside of your actual fire station. At night, you have no additional on the regular, ready to go crew other than what's in the station. So your supplemental staffing on nights is 0, your supplemental staffing on weekends is 0. And when we go back to pay records, we've had significant challenges in actually getting firefighters to turn out. We've had 2 firefighter officers that received stipends in the last month that did not field a single call. So they got paid, but they did not go out to actually service the residents during that time period. And there's a whole complex conversation around that. So what we're looking at this year is what I will describe as 4 possible plan options. There's a lot of hybridization that could take place here within these plan options. but we're really talking about this in the context of EMS. So Plan A, though not in any particular order, is what I'm gonna call status quo. We're just gonna bring things back in line with the budget, what we can afford between run revenue and taxpayer support, and that means 2 people in the station, 24/7, 365. I'm gonna call this 2 by 2, so day and night. And then you've got supplemental staff on day shift Monday through Friday. Most of our call volume happens beginning at 6 a.m. and then it's really slowed down by 11 p.m. You could hug that time frame even tighter and say, look, really 10 a.m. to about 6 p.m. is prime time for calls for us on average. So you really need more daytime coverage than you do nighttime coverage. And as for weekdays versus weekends, doesn't matter. It's just when people are awake and doing things or driving cars that we have more of a call volume demand. For Plan B, by the way, Plan A calls for no inter-facilities revenue. So we reduced the revenue by the corresponding amount. This year's budget was $42,000. We zero that out. We lay 2 people off at the end of the year at the paramedic level, and we run 2 by 2 staffing. Plan B is we are keeping things as they are with that one frozen position still in place. We could look to fill that if things move favorably through the year. What I would tell you is that there's been, I think, a bit of a gap in either understanding or leadership within the department, in that up until relatively recently, there's not been a lot of movement to actually get us towards inter-facilities. Some of that was cleanup. We had to go back and do narcotic logs checks that weren't done under past leadership, as well as clean up several other items related to inventorying and out-of-date medications. So some challenges existed that present leadership has had to clean up. So 3 by 3 is where you would be again, plus 2 on day shift Monday through Friday, and 4 firefighters or admin folks that are credentialed at least firefighter 1 level. Plan C gets you again a 3 by 3, but we look at reduced hourly wages. We did a market study that's included in your packet to find out how we stack up compared to comparable communities offering services like ours. And we're 45% over market, in some cases on both EMTs and paramedics. That was done consciously to stabilize the system that really had quite a bit of turnover, and we needed to attract people. I think that time has passed us, and we're now back in more of a market environment. And what we compensated for, we're very clearly communicating that, was that inter-facilities needed to start back up, and we needed to bring that revenue in to sustain this. Michelle and I have had no less than 4 meetings over there with the department to discuss the need for this revenue to come in. Consistently, choices were made to do other things. It just is what it is. At this point, I would say I think there's been broad recognition from the meeting that Adam and Trustee Goldhammer were in last week, and Michelle was there also, that something needs to change, and Dalton's here to talk about that a little bit this evening, in terms of how much effort is being made at present to try to right the ship, as it were, to be able to provide inter-facilities transports as a revenue source. Option D is one that really is the most radical out of what we're looking at. Option D calls for a wholesale wipeout of your officer corps so that you can bring in a full-time paramedic level chief. That would require a resignation of Chief Rosino, Assistant Chief Wagner, and every other officer in the department, so the new officer can come in as a chief, pick their own team, rearrange and manage, may decide that he wants to let other people go that are presently with the department. And so you give exclusive control to that chief to take care of what needs to be taken care of, to bring you back in line with 2 by 2 staffing, and we would have to figure out where to find the money, either through wage reductions past December 31st of this year, or some other mechanism to be able to make Plan D work. So Plan D is 2 by 2 with 1 rider, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Staffing is important when fielding a response. Now, being a paramedic licensed in the state of Wisconsin, and having gone through training at clinicals, for really bad calls, you need more hands than 2. It just is what it is. With that said, I'd like to go over just one really hard number that I think this body should deliberate from a public policy standpoint, and that is according to the American Heart Association. If you are an adult and we do CPR on you, you have an 8% chance of survival. That just is what it is. If you're a child, that number goes up to 12. If you are in a clinical facility, that number doubles. You know what else doubles that number? Bystander CPR. So if we actually took the money that we're concerned about putting into extra hands and put it into bystander CPR training and AEDs for our residents, we would health-wise get much better outcomes than what we get at present. That's a wholesale shift in community health. We're not gonna achieve that shortly. Yes.
Didn't the Lions Club give us machinery for that, for CPR?
So that's a Lucas device,
Yeah,
and
Lucas
that's used for chest compression, so is
CPR.
paramedic and EMTs in Wisconsin. We access those stay on the ambulance. I would not recommend that you put those devices out for general public use. It really is just to replace a set of hands for chest
But
compression.
that helps the percentage.
It doesn't necessarily help the percentage, it helps with the labor output from having two people there. So now one person can do other things while chest compressions are taking
I'm just going to
place.
the point that takes away 2 hands.
It's essentially like an extra set of hands, fair?
Yes.
Yeah. It's not foolproof.
Didn't say it was, but
Okay.
I'm weighing
Yep.
this.
Yes, sir.
With all these choices, the taxpayer supported number is the same.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Just so, and that is same as last year?
You're, don't beat me when I say this, Dom. Your only option to increase taxes is to borrow money, and it would be,
No, I just wanna make a point that
yes,
the budget has not been reduced.
correct. No, the taxpayer support amount stays the same. Right now, you're running deficit.
Exactly.
Yep.
I just wanna make sure I read that right. Thank
You're
you.
spending your savings in order to achieve what we have.
We're not doing it in a facility.
Right.
So what's the point, can we talk about that, because we had that revenue, we had that plan, it was sustaining
Staffing.
wages.
Yep.
So, and I looked through this and I'm not seeing it, and maybe I missed it. What's the plan for that? Are we gonna bring back 300 grand?
So, you gonna talk?
Yes, so while I can't comment on to the hows and whys, interfacilities have stopped and why they are not actively going on, I can comment a little bit, that those roadblocks have been removed, that me and my team have been working diligently 24/7 to market ourselves to these facilities for interfacilities, for transports. What we've been working with now, in the past with Chief Mueller's leadership, we had consistently about 2 clients that we did. And that would be Pro Health Mugwanago transporting to Waukesha Memorial Hospital, as well as the Cancer Center. Blue Moon would be Burlington Memorial discharging to home or St. Luke's, but that was very, very rare. The amount of clients that we're looking to take on for interfacilities is about triple what we did. So, we are expanding our client base, we are adjusting our market rates for inflation. So I don't think when the interfacility program is 100% that we can't exceed what we made in 2022, 2023. I think there's much more money to be made.
What's our plan to grab that money?
I'll talk about this just a little bit.
Because if you have revenue coming in, you don't have to cut wages on.
If I'm one of the employees and I know I'm being compensated at an hourly rate regardless if I do 2 runs a day, which is what we do on 911, or I do 5 runs a day and you had control over it, which one would you pick? 2 runs a day is a lot less work. Doing the cancer center runs that Dalton just described, they're not glamorous. They are work with real people that are very sick and need care and support. To go over to this, like as a setup, creates an incentive for that employee through a bonus structure, which is outlined in your packet, to say, hey, look, it's not just about the hourly rate. I need to start my shift by picking up the telephone and calling those facilities and saying, hey, we're available. Do you have any patients need to transport, anything you'd like to schedule today? Or if you have something to pop up, we're there. Right now, where we left things is to have the department itself discuss what it is that they would like to do. I think there are some folks, as I understand consensus, that are really heavily favoring, hey, let's stay with Plan B and just work really hard at it. I'm not sure that that gets us there long term. Over here, there's certainly gonna be some initial trepidation because, oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to really change how I live my life in order to continue on with this job. There may be folks that leave us under this plan and that we have to replace. It's hard to start anything, and it's much more easy to come on board when you're able to talk to people one-on-one and have them say, look, I get paid $24, for example, as a paramedic, but I'm earning, $240 a day in stipends running inner facilities. And so it nets out to $32 an hour, and just making numbers up off the top of my head. Yes, sir.
Am I understand this right? You're not actually lowering the wages, you're changing the pay structure.
Basically, change the pay structure. Yeah. So right now, what everybody has is a base pay. Whether they do 24 calls in a day or 0 calls in a day, everybody gets paid the exact same thing. That's not atypical for the medical industry until you get to higher levels of provider where you're a physician or a physician extender, in which case they are paid based on patient load, because their patient load is what impacts the bottom line for the entire organization. These are our front end providers, and we're not just providing basic level care, which is what the state mandates us to have, 2 by 2. We're not doing this because we need a more robust response in other areas. So these folks step in to provide that fire coverage, in addition to these folks. We've got others that come to the table, but this is about consistent response. So other options we've discussed, Rosie today recommended to Don and I and Michelle that we look at contracting out some or all of the fire department functions to another agency. And I think that's something that we should explore. It's been talked about for 20 years. Maybe we're the ones that fold up. Rosie, you gonna talk about that at all? No? Okay.
Last finance committee meeting, didn't we talk about $1 million going into the fire department? The building, you wanted it?
We have discussed adding on dorms as a means to provide some quality of life over there, and we've also talked about an engine last meeting. It was $1 million fire
We
engine.
talked, right, about putting $1 million to buy $1 million for the fire department. If I'm
That
not
was-
mistaken, at the finance committee.
That was the engine. Yep, new fire engine.
I thought it was for making the fire department a incubator.
No, sir.
Talking about the other stuff.
That one?
Yeah, you're talking about Fire Station 1.
But we
Yeah.
still, right.
Okay.
I'm just, from a trustee position, the amount of money we invested into our fire department the last few years, I find this disturbing. Cutting wages, cutting service, after we've invested so much in it, and it just perplexes me why we're not chasing
Inner facilities.
inner facilities.
Sure.
No, it's just my point.
It's a very valid point. This committee, along with the village trustees for years, have executed a mission that occasionally is followed through on. So, we had a very frank conversation last week. Would you guys agree to that?
Yes.
Just a very human conversation on people's livelihoods, who's responsible to the taxpayer, how we get our arms around an issue that, as long as I've sat up here, nobody's been able to do that. I understand that, as we were talking earlier, Don, it's a year-to-year situation that's sometimes difficult to figure out. But we need to get it figured out, and to your point, we continue to have expectations or put money in spots that it's not working out, and it seems to be fire and EMS every year for whatever reason. And I know we all can debate that we should be cutting money from the DPW, and the administrator should go from $130,000 down to $22,000 a year. We can all discuss all of that stuff. I get all that, and those are conversations that are going to be had going forward. But I feel there were some very solid reassurances to me last week that there is going to be an attempt to follow through on what the finance committee has asked and what the village trustees have asked. it was also brought forward to all of you that if we are doing it all wrong, and you all have a better suggestion or solution, that we were open to that as well. So, sitting in any of these seats is not glamorous in any regard whatsoever. But I also meant what I said at that meeting, that if we don't get our arms around this deficit issue across the board in the village of Waterford and are held responsible to the taxpayers, that if I am the bad guy, I will be the bad guy, because it's time that we get our financial house in order in one way or the other. So, throw darts at me, kick me out in a year, whatever you wanna do. For better or for worse, the last few years, we've tried to address it as a year-to-year situation, doing the best we can do. I know the experts in the room and the experts in the community and the experts on social media will say otherwise. If one thing anybody's learned about me, I'm willing to listen, whether people believe that or not. I don't always make the right decision. This committee doesn't always make the right decision. The administrator doesn't make the right decision. We are trying our best, and I feel that that was one of the most frank conversations in almost 5 years that I've served on this board in any capacity that we had last week. Agreed. Okay, so I'm glad we're on the same page with that, and I think it's fair to this committee, and it's fair to the village trustees that tasked you guys with attempting interfacilities to get up and attempt interfacilities.
Absolutely, Mr. President.
Okay, I greatly appreciate that.
So I have a question. So when I was reviewing all these things, there was comparisons to the wages of various communities around us. What are they experiencing the same sort of thing? I mean, and if so, what are they doing about it? Is it something that you can have a conversation about, or do you just ignore those people?
Every community that I know the administrator in has got some variable of this issue that we're discussing. So for those that have pay on the low end, it's about retention and how do you fill up the shift. And so you've either got folks that are coming in as volunteers to fill the shift to make sure coverage is there, or the resident is paying for it with decreased response time. So for example, I live over in Rochester, right across from the fire station. There's staff during the day shift. If a call comes in at night, that community has decided through an assessment of the risk profile that they're okay with a 20 to 45 minute response, whatever it may be. There are times that tones go out 3 times and no one responds, and that's something that this community used to contend with.
We should never go back there.
That's a rarity, right? But in rural America, the thought is something like, we want low taxes, and in order to have low taxes, you move some of the responsibility of taking care of yourself from government taking care of you to you doing that on your own. I think most people living in rural America have that expectation that, hey, look, I'm gonna at least think about driving myself to the hospital, versus if you're in Chicago, it's probably a, hey, I'm calling the ambulance no matter what, right? I stubbed my toe, I need a ride. And I'm being facetious about that, of course, but it bears out, right? Some generalities. So if your wages are too low, you have a recruitment issue. Our wages, when I first got here, were definitely on the low side of things. You're running a volunteer system where your employees are being paid in adrenaline and street credit, and that was a great system while it lasted. That time really has exhausted. We asked our board, and I'll ask the finance committee now, if any of you are willing to go through Fire One or jump on through paramedic, right, to take that training. And it's like, well, the answer is probably no, right? And if the answer is no, you guys yourselves don't want to do it, that means we're either going to pay someone to do it, or if we're lucky enough to have some folks to volunteer, we'll take those volunteers and use them where we can. There's just a going rate for these things. And to that point, that going rate is in your packet. And what we're paying is, let's call it 33% over market minimum if we did a market average of what we have. And so if we end up looking at option C and reducing wages, I'm sure there are some people that would go somewhere else. And then we will advertise those market wages out and be in the same position some of those other communities are in, which is, okay, we've got some recruitment and retention issues. Your health insurance is better than every community that's there. Your PTO is comparable or better to every community that's there, and your wages are better than every community that's there in that study.
From an organizational structure standpoint, meaning from corporate world and management, C&D makes us, for me, you're killing what you've built. You're killing loyalty, you have to retrain, you're losing people. I fundamentally, like, what kind of organization do we wanna be? Do we wanna be an organization that cuts, or do we wanna be an organization that takes care of our employees? And we have to have that serious talk about taxes, or a referendum. I mean, Don, I know for 10, 12 years you held the line on taxes, and frankly, we've talked about it before, I think it's hurt us. We needed to have taxes go up just a little bit every year, so we could cover this stuff, and now here we are. So I think that's the hard conversation we have to have with the community, is about raising taxes, or going to referendum. Because C&D, from an organizational perspective, is pulling us down instead of us moving forward.
Thank you. Any other comments from this committee?
I have a question.
Sure.
The comparables that you gave us are those similar in size as?
That's what we were looking for. I mean, you
Okay.
got Union Grove and Wind Lake, and it was just either in the area close in size or across the state close in size, population.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to hear from you guys, what's your thoughts? Which option?
If I could, so what administration and the executive tasked the department with doing is having a conversation to develop a consensus plan to bring back here. Tonight's volley at this is to let you know, hey, some change is coming. And it's to let the public know, hey, some change is coming. Public wants to weigh in, great. If there's somebody that has a fix-all solution, I think all of us are all ears. The fact of the matter is this is challenging. There's a financial aspect to this, and there's a human element to this. You need to create.
I'll change my question. What's the recommendation?
Tonight, the recommendation is to think about it. We're not looking for action on this tonight. What we're looking for is for you all to be briefed on the matter that's at hand, and to give the EMS department a moment over the next 2 weeks to develop a plan to bring it forward. Dalton and the crew that you see sitting here have been working on this every day since our meeting last week. We're trying to put something together.
So I think Administrator Jackson is on to exactly what we need to do. We need to process this. Again, the conversation we had was very good, very frank, very human, very, very raw, and very to the point. Let me finish these. We need to process this. We need to think about this with some expediency, and we need to really think of how we need to get this done, because to just be very honest, in the roughly, like I said earlier, the 5 years that I've been sitting up here, and you've all been here longer than me. Well, not the committee, I'm sorry, the trustees, and I apologize. We really haven't gotten our hands around the issue at any year. We've always had a deficit, we've always had a problem, and again, we need to come to a solution that works for you guys, because you're the ones going out there and putting your lives on the line and taking care of this community when they need the help that they need. But to other points, the taxpayers are asked a lot all the time, so we need to come to a solution, and it's not gonna probably be an easy one. I appreciate Chief Rosina saying something outside the box that nobody probably wants to do or hear, but maybe that is a solution that needs to truly be looked at. I know how you feel, and I know how people feel, but we've never gotten past our feelings on some of these things.
But we're already invested.
I understand that, but without getting too worked up about this, and all due respect, Don, we've had a lot of leaders all sitting up here, and we've never gotten to the point that we're gonna form a district. It's all been talk. We have leaders in surrounding communities that are not willing to be the leaders. They're letting the individuals that run those fire departments continue to run the fire departments and make the decisions for the electeds. So until something changes, I don't know how we all feel that that's gonna change by next year.
I have a question for these guys, and I'm not familiar with your industry. Well, working in it, like, but, you know, understanding the top level. Can you guys, cause it's revenue, we need revenue to offset our deficit. Can you get contracts, like legitimate contracts with the hospitals and get those signed where we have that revenue coming in?
You have one right now.
Yes, we have one current with Pro Health, Mugwanago. So, under that contract, the revenue is billed towards the facility, which has a very above average payout, obviously, because you're billing a hospital, so there's no bounce checks, there's no waiting around, whatever, they're very on time. Every place that is not contracted with us in such manner would be billed as if it were a 911 rate.
So can we offer those other facilities a contracted rate to pull them in and then and then have a contract?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that solves our problem, is sales save sins in the business world.
Yes, so as we dive into this issue of interfacilities, we're finding that there aren't actually that many roadblocks. We're finding that there was just a lot of, I don't know what you would wanna call it at the leadership level, but there.
I'm gonna call it, right, so there's a word for it, and that word's insubordination. Yeah, that's the word.
If that's the word Zeke
We-
wants
we
to
know.
have, but there have been roadblocks. And we're finding that now that those roadblocks are removed, that interfacilities should not have gone this far. This is a problem that could have been solved at any point and would not have taken very long. So we agree and understand your frustration that it's taken this long. As we dive into the problem, with those leadership roadblocks removed, we're finding that a lot of this stuff is not an issue. Some of the stuff with the hospitals, so Pro Health Mugwanago, who was our biggest client under Chief Rick for interfacilities, they have to call the Mugwanago Fire Department first. They're under contract with them. I would say about half or more than half the time, Mugwanago would rather choose to sleep, eat, watch a football game. They turn these down. In those cases, then they have to turn to a private ambulance, which is currently with Bell. So our competition would be with Bell Ambulance for Mugwanago.
Can we beat them?
Yes.
Let's do it.
We are comparable to Bell Ambulance, so literally it can come down to they like us better, we're more friendly, whatever, they're gonna call us when Mugwanago doesn't answer. Likewise with Aurora is contracted with Superior Ambulance. Superior Ambulance is supposed to be their number one call. If they can't take it, Superior Ambulance is supposed to help that hospital figure out what ambulance company is gonna take that patient where. My partner Matt here has called Aurora Burlington today, and they were over the moon to hear that we are available for interfacilities, because sometimes Superior Ambulances can take 8 to 9 hours to arrive at their facility. So if we can show up 8 hours sooner, we're gonna be an obvious phone call for them. And without contract for them, an ALS transport, I'm not sure what our current rates are, but $1,500 for an ALS transport. Just for that one interfacility.
Let's be the provider of choice for a region.
That's exactly how we wanna market ourselves. It's gonna be difficult at first, just with the staffing. That's why we wanna go with a plan that includes the most staffing. More bodies means more interfacilities. But we are very optimistic, in the market. The interfacility market is a great time to get into it. We've broken a ton of ground today, and after the meeting that we had about interfacilities on Thursday, that night, my wife, who works in one of the ERs, called me and said that they had a potential interfacility for us that night. So not even 12 hours after talking about it, we could have had one. So as of right now, if any hospital calls us, we are going to take it. We're gonna say, yes, what do you need, whatever, and then we're gonna work behind the scenes to, if we need to bring in an off-duty member to make that work, but we would like to have one interfacility ambulance available 24/7 for scheduled and unscheduled interfacilities. Adjusted pay rates post-COVID and inflation, as well as the increased amount of clients that we would be taking, there's no reason that at full capacity, we can't exceed the numbers that we were bringing in 2022, 2023.
Would it behoove us to undercut competitors' rates?
It's not about undercutting, it's
Well,
about consistency of service.
Well, that's what I mean.
If the hospital is comfortable with calling us and then we consistently get an ambulance to them in a reasonable amount of time, within 1 hour usually, which with the staffing that we have now, if somebody agrees to that, nobody lives that far away where that's not feasible, we can undercut all competition.
Just with service, not pricing.
Yes,
Yeah.
and every facility that we've called today is more than happy to have us help out. So now it's literally just an issue of making these hospitals, making these facilities aware that we're doing them, and just marketing ourselves so that they know that we're available to call again.
I think this is the strategy we should take.
Andy, to understand how these calls get generated, there's administrative level policy for the hospital and contracts for the hospital, but who makes the call really is the nurse who's in charge of the patient, who is actually responsible for picking up the telephone and getting somebody there. And having been in a clinical setting, the only thing that nurse wants is for that problem, for that patient to go away in that moment, and that means who can get here the quickest, provide competent service, and take that patient to somewhere for definitive care. Sometimes it means tying an ambulance up for a considerable time period, either to go to a state facility or a mental health facility that's not super local to our area. And in which case, those longer transport times are compensated for with mileage. It's an IRS mileage rate less than $7.65 a mile, but you're still getting the bill out. It really is about consistent delivery of service day in, day out, and having that be managed. Don said once upon a time, we're either going to get bigger or we're going to get smaller. It's I think an apt simplification of the conversation we're having right here. What Lieutenant Brandt is talking about is, hey, we've got to deliver one ambulance 24/7, 365. I had it up here just a second ago. That's right. You've got to have 2 people on day, 2 people on night to be able to legally do that. DHS 110 also says if you're a paramedic level service and you are offering interfacilities transports, you cannot send your only paramedic off to do the transport. You have to have a paramedic held behind. That's why I went and got my license. Right. At the time, we had real trouble recruiting paramedics. It's not a problem if you got 2 on duty on day shift.
Okay, is there anybody else that wants to say anything regarding this topic before we move on?
I have a question. When do we need to make a decision? I assume this is a critical issue that needs to be resolved relatively soon, or?
We have got this budget year's process, in our conversations with S&P, we've explained to them, we expect this deficit is not fully going to go away in 2026. The plan will be put in place during 2025, executed during 2026, to be debt neutral or expenditure neutral in 2027. They understand that. So I think the important part is to make a good decision in 2025 that we can operationalize and live with. To Adam's point, I've heard a lot of encouraging things over the last 48 hours in terms of the department. I think ultimately it got real. The fact that, and I'm going to put out there exactly what I did. I'm sure there will be people that have a problem with it. We are going to draw straws. Why? Because there are only 4 mechanisms I can conceive of that will not possibly generate a lawsuit for the village. Number 1, we're going to terminate the most senior members. Number 2, we're going to terminate the least senior members. Number 3, we're going to draw numbers out of a hat. Number 4, we're going to draw straws. Anything else leaves it open to, hey, I'm going to sue you for whatever.
Don't you
Right?
have performance reviews that you could use as a
You
standard?
could, it doesn't matter, you can still get sued on that one. The easiest defense is to do complete random assignment, right, for layoffs, which is
Okay,
why.
we're not gonna worry about layoffs at this date today. So to Linda's point, we need to have a solution or a plan for a solution going into next budget year, which we will now be starting this process as we already have, so. Yeah, we can keep beating this. We heard encouraging things. I've sat in finance for 4 years and heard encouraging things. I've sat up here as a village trustee and heard encouraging things. We need the encouraging things to actually happen. And again, I will be the bad guy. I'm already the bad guy. I will continue to be the bad guy and make the tough decisions if we can't figure out what we have to do to work towards no more budget deficit. Okay.
One more question.
Yep, and then we really need to move on.
Are they able to start them now? If they got a call
I
tonight?
have a phone on me that is specifically designed for hospitals to call, that is then triaged to the station. If for whatever reason I do not answer it, if a hospital was to call me saying I have an interfacility transport, we would accept that immediately. We have made phone calls to several hospitals today. They are well aware we're in the market and they're excited to utilize us.
Thank you.
Good answers.
And I also want to thank you guys for being here tonight after last week's meeting. It was a lot to process for everybody, I'm sure, so just thank you for making the effort to follow through with this process going forward.
We're excited for the potential.
Thank you. All right, number 2, review and discuss